When I was a kid, I loved buying books. Well, I loved asking my parents to buy me books, should I say. But I loved owning them more than I did actually reading them. I remember I had the Harry Potter series. I bought the first 3 books, and I loved just looking at them, but never really opening up the pages and reading them. Now, this kind of describes too many Christians today, in my opinion. They have books sitting on their shelves, like behind me here, but they don't actually read them. Now, unlike when I was a child, they might actually have the desire to read those books, but they just don't feel like they have time to read them. So they just kind of sit there looking pretty. Do you feel like you never have the time to read? Do you feel like the idea of even something like reading every single day seems impossible to you? Well, today I want to show you that that is not impossible, and in fact, why you as a Reformed Christian man need to be reading every single day. You need to develop a reading habit. So in this video, I'm going to cover 7 steps to help you get back on track if you have been a reader in the past, or if you haven't been, to start developing your daily reading habit. If you follow these in the order I tell you, you'll develop a daily reading habit that is robust, that will be matched to your current ability levels with how much time you've got, to your energy levels, what time of day works for you, and much, much more. Now, if you're new to the channel here, my name is Aidan Russell. I'm the founder of Reformation Book Club. On this channel, I help Reformed Christian men develop better reading habits and read more books to the glory of God. If you are someone who wants to read better, read more in your life, welcome. And I encourage you to sign up for my 5-day Reformed Reader Challenge down below in the description for free. I'm going to send you 5 emails over 5 days. These are the things that I used to kickstart a reading habit in my life years ago. It's allowed me to read 200 plus books over the last few years. Over 600 men have now taken the challenge. So if you want to join them, click the link below. Go check that out once you finish this video, and you'll be able to get the first email pretty much straight away. All right, so let's dive into these 7 steps. Now, before we do though, it's actually a little like precursor step that I think a lot of Christians miss in this whole development of a reading habit. The first thing you need to do, which if you don't do this, nothing's going to work, is you need to develop a conviction that reading is important. I talk about this in the 5-day Reformed Reader Challenge. I'm going to talk about it here. So pay attention to what I'm about to say. You need to be convinced, you need to be convicted of the importance of reading to do it regularly enough, because if you're not, it will become a lower priority in your life. Now, I'm not going to pretend like reading, theological or Christian books is more important than, say, reading the Bible, your prayer life. It's not more important than going to church, but it is important, and it's a heck of a lot more important, in my opinion, than a lot of what we do in the modern world spend our time doing. Look at someone like Daniel, right? In the book of Daniel, he prayed 3 times a day in a kingdom, in a world where it was illegal to pray, and he still did it 3 times a day. Yet, to read for 5 minutes a day in our modern age just seems like too much to ask, right? We've got our phones, we've got our TVs, we've got so many other distractions, but it's too much for us. But that helps us to reframe that it is possible. It's often that we are the problem and our perspective is the problem. So if you do have that conviction from Scripture, from what and who God calls you to be, you will carve out time. You will remove distractions and barriers to reading, and you will make it as much as possible a daily rhythm in your life, along with reading Scripture, along with your personal devotional time, right? So that's the first thing. You need a conviction that it's important. Nothing's going to work otherwise. But then the first step, once you've got that conviction, is simply just to start small. Some of you may have heard the statistics of some of the great theologians, pastors out there who read a ton. Someone like D.A. Carson, who you may be familiar with, has been known to read 300 to 500 books per year. Now, that just makes me giddy when I hear that, because I'm like, on one hand, that would be awesome to read that much. I'm nowhere near that. But at the same time, I'm bewildered. How does he read that much in 1 year? Now, turns out he reads some books the whole way through. Sometimes he's just flicking through and referencing parts of a book. Some books he's more deep studying. But that's kind of what contributes to that quite high number. So, if I added the books I'm sort of surveying, mine might be closer to 100 maybe at most, but nowhere near his huge numbers there. But everyone hears these statistics and thinks, man, I would love to be able to read that much. I want to be that power reader. I want to be the guy that, has read all these books. But few Christian men are willing to humble themselves and start where they're at. If you're not reading every day, at least a little bit, you cannot expect to be anywhere near 300 to 500 books per year. You can't really expect to be near 50 books per year, right? Start small. Now, I have one recommendation. If you're not currently reading every day, start with 5 pages or 5 minutes a day. Doesn't matter really whether you count pages or minutes. I prefer counting pages for reasons I mentioned to my members in Reformation Book Club. But just start with either of those, 5 pages or 5 minutes. Call it a 5-page rule or the 5-minute rule, whatever you want to call it. That is something that I think every literate Christian man on the planet can commit to. Anyone can find 5 minutes, 5 pages a day. And if you can't, there's something seriously wrong in your balances that I think needs correction. That's 5 minutes on the train home, 5 minutes when you first wake up, 5 minutes right before bed. I think everyone can start there, right? Again, if you've never read before or you used to read way more, but you've kind of fallen off the bandwagon, start again, 5 minutes, 5 pages. Now, I'm going to talk about in step 5 how you can start ramping that up. So do stick around. I'm going to dive more into that. But we need to talk about something else first. We need to talk about step 2, which is to read at times of the day where you've got high energy and low interruption. Now, when it comes to reading times, reading habits, I'm reminded of Proverbs 21 verse 5, which is the plans of the diligent surely lead to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Right? So what tends to happen when we're developing a reading habit is we kind of just pick the first time of day that we think is going to work, right? We're just like, the only time I've got is, this time, and I'll just squeeze it in then, after dinner, before the kids go to bed, or, before the kids wake up. They just kind of develop a habit hastily based on the first available window that comes to their mind, but they don't really plan things out diligently. They don't plan to read at times where there's high energy and low interruption. Now, I am not out here saying, and please hear me well, I am not out here saying you need to carve everything out around your reading habit and make sure it's at the highest energy point and the lowest interruption point of your day, because that is probably not realistic for most men out there. If you've got families, you're serving in your churches, it's not going to happen. But it's going to be different for everybody, and it's going to be the most ideal considering your circumstances, right? So you might be more alert in the mornings, right? Maybe for you, 9 a.m. is kind of like your peak energy time. You've had coffee, you've had breakfast, but 9 a.m. is when you work. So you can't really read then. So, okay, what's the next best option? What's the next most ideal? Maybe it's with breakfast. You read 5 pages, 5 minutes. Or maybe just before breakfast, before the kids get up. Maybe you're a night owl and you prefer reading for 5 minutes just before bed or just after you've had dinner, or whatever that looks like for you. You know your energy levels, and you also know when you're most likely to get interrupted, whether that's family, work, people, whatever's going on in your life. Plan for the most ideal considering your circumstances where your energy is high and interruptions are low. But before we continue, let's talk about the next biggest mistake, which is actually step 3. You can have, okay, I want to start small. Okay, I know a time of day. I've thought about it. I know when my interruptions are low and my energy is high. But it stays a theory. It stays a concept, but it doesn't start taking action. When you create a plan, and people think they need to have all their ducks in a row. They read a verse like Proverbs 21 verse 5, like the plans of the diligent surely lead to abundance, but anyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. They think, well, I need to take my time planning. And that's true. But you also don't want to just, like Proverbs also says, have mere talk. We can plan, we can talk about what we're going to do, but never actually start reading. So there's a balance, if we read the Proverbs, that we need to consider. And so what I would say is you can do the minimal amount of planning find a time to read, find a time that's going to work and that's going to be realistic for you to commit to, that's going to have your energy levels high enough so you're not falling asleep, so you're not getting distracted, but then do it today. And at the very least, if you can't do it today because it's the end of the day, do it tomorrow. I'm thinking of Ephesians 5 verse 16 when I think of this. Make the most of the time you have. Make the most of every opportunity. Don't wait. There's no point in making a plan only to delay it for basically no reason whatsoever. So, a quick bit of homework for you. Watch the rest of this video. Go check out the 5-day Reformed Read Challenge before you click off. And then once you've done that, go read. Or at least go read tomorrow, if that's your time of day you've chosen. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. You'll notice this is halfway through the steps. That's when you actually start reading. Right, so start. Read those 5 pages today. All right, then once you've got a habit, you actually, starting today is the first thing. Then you just need to focus on one thing. One thing. Consistency over volume. Now, this might seem obvious, but there's a hidden trap that kills most reading habits, and there's 2 parts to it. It's overcomplicating your reading habit and overdoing it. Overcomplicating it, you have to have all your ducks in a row to read. You have to have your perfect bookmark, your pen for highlighting. You have to make a coffee. And I love rituals and stuff like that for, getting into a reading habit. I think those things can be helpful. But when you're developing a habit, just don't overcomplicate it. Just get the book, go sit in your place and read. And then secondly, don't overdo it. You might have some days where you're higher energy, and that's normal. Humans have energy levels different on different days. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But don't, because you have a high energy on one day, don't then go, oh, well, I read 30 minutes yesterday, I have to keep that up today. Like, it's fine if you're reading extra on some days. In fact, that's pretty normal. But if your 5 minutes is your 5 minutes, do 5 minutes the next day, if that's all you can do. Don't set yourself up for failure by thinking, I have to keep doing more and more and more, otherwise I'm not progressing in the right direction. No, it's not a linear line like some people think it is. It's more like that jagged up and down sort of slow increase in general. If you can imagine the graph that I'm trying to draw there with my pen. And a few things that really help with consistency over volume is to remove friction. Just make it the simplest you possibly can. I love reading tools. I love taking notes. I love underlining my books. That's something I've gotten into in more recent history because I think it can help you retain and develop a comprehensive knowledge and wisdom when you read books, when you read the Bible. But when you're getting into it and you're just developing that habit, you need to remove friction. You don't need to add more to the reading process than simply sitting down and reading. If your reading habit involves you having to drive 30 minutes to a park, I mean, if that's the only option, sure, but can't you make it a little easier? Do it at home, or maybe, do it when you're already at somewhere, like on the train to work or at work on your lunch break, or, when you go for a walk down to the coffee shop at work, do 5 minutes of reading then. Isn't there a time that you can just make it super simple for yourself and keep up the consistency because you're doing it every day, if not most days? That's what I'm thinking about here. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't overdo it. And also on this point, if in order to maintain consistency over just thinking of, I'm going to try and read more in a complicated way, focus on having backup options. I think that's a better use of your energy at this point. It's like, okay, all I need to do is read every day. If I don't get that in because something happens, what's my backup plan? Am I going to read, at a later time in the day? Am I going to catch up tomorrow? Am I going to say, okay, you know what? I missed a day and that's fine, as a sort of the worst case scenario. People who have backup options or other times in the day they could catch up on reading might be less ideal. Not a perfect, no interruptions moment. Maybe it's, reading for 5 minutes between dropping the kids at the sporting event and, getting home or something like that in the car. That might not be ideal, but that's a backup, right? Stuff like that is really, really helpful. So this all comes back down to focus on the consistency of your habit over how much or how intense it is, right? Consistency over volume, because you've started your habit now. You're reading every day. You just don't want to break the chain as much as possible. And what happens is, as it becomes part of your rhythm, you'll be able to then progress to step 5, which I hinted at early, which is to ramp up slowly. And on that, I think ramp up slower than you think or than most people think. We often, in our New Year's resolution culture, when it comes to something like the gym, everyone's like, I want to, go to the gym 4 times a week in this new year. I want to lose weight. I want to get in shape. And again, I kind of talked about this earlier. They look at the people who are already there and, like D.A. Carson reading 300 to 500 books, and they think, I want to be there, so I want to get there as soon as possible. But if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's that you might think you need all this time, but if you think you need more time to read, you probably need less time to read. Now, that sounds weird, Aiden. I don't read currently at all. Yes, but you probably don't need to read as much as you think in the beginning. You just need to start, and you need to ramp up slowly. So I'm going to give you a little illustration here. Remember, diligence is not haste, right? So slow things down more than you and your brain want to. Let's start with the 5-minute rule that we talked about earlier back. I think it was in step 1. Yeah, in step 1. So let's say the first week you're developing your daily reading habit, 5 minutes a day for 7 days, for 1 week. Now, you're probably going to, if you're actually doing that every day, some days feel like, I want to do more. And look, you might do more, that's fine. But start 5 minutes a day. Resist the temptation to go crazy early on. Then the next week, 10 minutes a day. Increase it by 5. Might still feel easy. That's good. Keep it up. 15 minutes a day the next week. So we're 3 weeks in now and we're doing 15 minutes a day. Might feel still really small. 20 minutes a day in week 4. 30 minutes a day in week 5. 45 minutes a day in week 6. 60 minutes a day in week 7. Now, that seems like a really slow ramp up. Trust me, 7 weeks is not that long. And if you can be reading for an hour a day in 7 weeks, that is actually really fast. But in the beginning, it's going to feel slow. And that's the point, is you have to have the humility, the patience to really see your habit take off. Focus on just sitting down and reading every day. You'll see exponential increases there, right? Towards the end, 30, 45, 60, as opposed to little 5-minute increases, right? Now, you also will reach a maximum. Not everyone can read for 4 hours a day. In fact, I'd say most people cannot do that. An hour to 2 a day is probably the max for most people, unless you're sort of a pastor or you do reading for your job. I personally do 30 to 60 minutes a day at the moment. Sometimes in the past I've done longer, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. Now, that's step 5, ramp up slowly, slower than you think. The last thing is step 6. If we count 7 steps, including step 0, this is the last one, right? Step 6 is to find others to spur you on. Now, this is something nobody talks about that I've found in terms of reading. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, we have like small groups in our modern evangelical culture for reading the Bible, but we don't really have people, like commonly speaking, I'm talking about, we don't really have a culture of let's get together and read, or let's just spur one another on in reading, right? It's hard, though, to read on your own when you're the only one sort of trying to read more. It's better to do it with other people. This is where Reformation Book Club comes in. It's why I created it. I wanted Reformed Christian men from across the world to spur one another on in their reading habits and create a generation of Christians who are intelligent, wise, and are well-read. And I think that's important for engaging with culture, for leading our churches and families and ourselves, and glorifying God in this life. So if you want to find other like-minded Christians who are also developing daily reading habits, reading lots of books, I would encourage you to join RBC and, be on that journey to becoming the wise, intelligent Christian man that God calls you to be. Do it with other people. It's going to make it way more enjoyable. It's going to make it more likely to stick, and it just has a whole extra dimension to the life of reading, right? So to summarize what we've covered today, first thing, step 0, develop a conviction. Step 1, start small. Step 2, focus on a time a day with high energy and low interruption. Step 3, start today/tomorrow. Step 4, focus on consistency over volume or intensity. Step 5, ramp up slowly. And step 6, find others to spur you on in the Christian reading life. That is my advice to you. Again, start with the beginning, develop that conviction and go from there, and see if you can get to that fourth step, third step, depending on how you look at it, of starting today. I think you can do those first 3 or 4 steps right now. And if you need extra encouragement over the next few days, the next step to take is to sign up for the 5-day Reformed Reader Challenge for free. Enter your email and name, and I'm going to send you day 1 right now. That's going to help you develop that conviction of reading. It's going to give you some scripture to talk about the importance of reading in the Christian life and the importance of being well read, the importance of writings and reading them. So go check that out. We've had over 600 men now, rather, I think, take that and being, really blessed by it. So you could be next. All right, go check that out. And until the next video, God bless, and I'll see you next time.